Martha walked through the mall and smiled, enjoying life. Many people do not appreciate the fact of birth and tend to blame their failures on their parents or fate, but Martha always knew that the main thing is life, and everything else can be achieved if you have the desire and purpose. Immersed in her thoughts, Martha did not notice a stranger with a cup of coffee in his hands, who almost knocked her down. Barely recovered from the unexpected encounter, Martha realized that her cream-coloured blouse was hopelessly ruined. The girl smiled modestly and looked calmly at the young man, who was apologizing fearfully and didn't know how to make amends. "That's all right," she said. "If I can't wash it, I'll be wearing it at home during cleaning." The man was greatly surprised that the woman did not make a scandal and demand a refund, and he looked at Martha with interest. "As an apology for my awkwardness, I invite you to dinner at the restaurant tonight," he said suddenly, with such a disarming smile that Martha could not refuse him. They exchanged phone numbers, and Sebastian offered to drive his new acquaintance home so she did not have to go in a stained blouse on the subway. The evening at the restaurant was wonderful. Martha and Sebastian proved to have much in common, and they decided to get to know each other better and perhaps continue their relationship. By Martha's appearance and her outfit, Sebastian immediately thought she was a strong and independent woman, and also earned a decent living. And when she paid for herself, he was finally convinced that he had not made a wrong choice. They met almost every day since then. Sebastian often boasted that he was an excellent marketer and that his companions tried to poach him by offering him a higher salary. But he only stayed in his old job because he was uncomfortable in leaving, as he had got the job through friendship and did not want to set up the person who had helped him. More than once he tried to ask Martha where she was working, but she always avoided answering, saying that the important thing was not a person's position, but what he had in his soul and heart. After a few months of dating, Sebastian started talking about a future together, and he even planned to introduce Martha to his parents and friends. The young woman did not want to rush into it because she had already had the experience of a failed relationship once, and now she was afraid to make a mistake again. But Martha could not resist her feelings for long because she fell in love with Sebastian, and deep down she dreamed of becoming his wife. One evening, the couple were supposed to go to a concert, but Martha stayed at work longer than usual and asked Sebastian to pick her up. The man was very excited because he finally had a chance to find out where his beloved was working. Judging by the fact that she gave the address of one of the city's most prestigious business centres, Sebastian realized that Martha held quite a high position there. Sebastian arrived earlier than scheduled, and after getting the number of the office from the security guard, hurried up to the 5th floor. As Sebastian pushed open the glass door, he froze on the threshold. His beloved was cleaning the floor, diligently working with a mop in front of him. Disappointment, together with some inexplicable feelings, filled Sebastian's soul. "Cleaning woman? Are you serious?" He grinned and felt the crumble of his naive dreams in which he had imagined this beautiful woman in the chair of, at least, the director or head of the department. Martha looked at Sebastian in surprise. She had not expected him to come so early and asked him to wait for a little until she finished cleaning the hallway. She acted calm and natural, as if nothing had happened, and Sebastian became suddenly angry. He started laughing so hysterically that Martha left the mop, straightened up, and looked at the young man with an incomprehensible look. "Are you all right?" she asked. "You tricked me good," laughed Sebastian. "That's why you didn't tell me where you worked, huh? And you made that circus at the restaurant on the first day. You paid for dinner yourself. You got expensive clothes somewhere. You must have rented it. I really thought you were a successful woman. But you're just a miserable cleaning lady." The man continued to laugh hysterically, unable to calm down, and when he finally managed to pull himself together, he looked at Martha with such a contemptuous look that the woman even shuddered with horror. That sweet, attentive man, with his warm and tender eyes, suddenly disappeared. Instead, an unfamiliar and unpleasant man stood in front of her, a man from whom she wanted to run away and never see again. Martha's eyes tinged with sorrow, but she did her best to contain her emotions. "And of course you can forget about the concept. I'm lucky that I didn't have time to introduce you to my friends. Otherwise, I would have embarrassed myself in front of them. I am disgusted at the thought that with those hands you used to scrub toilets. You hugged me afterward," he said with disgust, and headed for the exit. Martha waited with difficulty until he had left the office, and, leaning tiredly against the wall, she sank slowly to the floor and let her tears flow. She was hurt by Sebastian's words, but most of all, it was painful that she had once more trusted a man who did not deserve it at all. Soon Martha calmed down. She suddenly realized how right she had been in letting the cleaning lady leave work early today. The elderly woman had her daughter in the hospital, and her son-in-law was away on a business trip, so she had to pick up her granddaughter from kindergarten that day. Martha treated all of her employees like family and was always ready to help them. And at the end of that workday she was carrying water for her flowers and accidentally spilled and had to clean up. Now she was glad of that, because it helped her really get to know the man with whom she planned to tie her life together. Several months passed. Sebastian could hardly calm down and get over the idea that he was in a relationship with the cleaning lady, and was furious with Martha for hiding the truth for so long. He was ashamed in front of his friends, and to all their questions about his unexpected separation from the woman he had loved, he only joked and said that they did not agree in character. One day the boss sent him to conclude a contract in the very agency where Martha was working. Sebastian was anxious that he would accidentally meet her, and she would decide to talk to him. He felt that he could not survive such an embarrassment, but this contract was too important for his career, and Sebastian could not refuse. His task was to negotiate a discount, and his boss definitely made it clear that his career would depend on how he handled it. Sebastian was focused and tense as he rode the elevator up to the 5th floor, but when he entered the office, he shuddered and was confused. He saw the cleaning lady in front of him and thought it was Martha, but then he looked more closely and realized that it was an elderly woman. Sebastian relaxed a little and told the secretary that he had an appointment with the director. The woman smiled and walked him into the office. Sebastian confidently opened the door, but then he froze on the spot and felt a cold sweat run down his back, and his mouth went dry. He looked at the woman standing with her back to him, wiping the dust from the leaves of the flowers, and could not believe that it was Martha. Sebastian hesitated, not knowing what to do, and then Martha finally turned around. She was surprised to see Sebastian because before she had been in contact with another marketing specialist, but she made no sign that she recognized him. Martha greeted him coldly and nonchalantly, as if they had never had a close relationship, pain, disappointment, and that humiliating last conversation. She took the documents from Sebastian and sat down in her chair, scrutinizing the contents of the papers. The man carefully sat down in the chair opposite, watching Martha and thinking bitterly about how stupid he had been, not figuring out the situation and losing his chance to be together with such a successful woman. Unable to refrain himself, Sebastian asked the main question. Why did it all happen between us like that? What does it matter now? Asked Martha, a counter question without taking her eyes off the papers. It has happened and nothing can be changed, she added, and smiled politely but very coldly. Sebastian nodded sadly, realizing that Martha was right. She could never forgive him and forget what he had done. Finishing studying the contract, Martha looked up at Sebastian and measured him with such an icy stare that the man shuddered and realized at once that he could hardly negotiate a discount with Martha. The amount of work is massive, so I'm not prepared to sign a contract like that. The woman shook her head. We're the best promotion agency, and you should increase the contract sum by at least 50% just to start the discussion. Sebastian realized that he had blown the deal. Losing his temper, he began begging Martha for forgiveness. He asked her not to act so harshly to him, reminded her how good they had been together, and tried to persuade her to think again. It was no longer a question of a discount. He asked her to at least agree to the terms that had previously been negotiated and written down in the current version of the contract, but Martha was adamant. Leaving the office, he went outside and doomfully called his boss. The man immediately asked what kind of discount he had got, expecting to hear whatever, but not what Sebastian had reported. She wants to increase the cost of the contract by 50%, Sebastian admitted, and mentally prepared himself for a reprimand from the chief. Are you kidding? How tired I am of you! That's it! I'll never hire anyone by acquaintance again. I expect you tomorrow morning with a letter of resignation. There were short beeps on the phone, and Sebastian realized that this time he had made an irreparable mistake, and his career was definitely over. He used to tell Martha about his successes, while in reality Sebastian was a mediocre specialist. He made many mistakes in his work, and only thanks to his acquaintances he managed to get a job in a good company. Now he had no idea who would take him to such a good position with a high salary, and thought that most likely he would have to go to work as a loader or worse, a janitor. And at that moment he remembered vividly the hurt look Martha had given him when he had been laughing at her, and he felt hurt and ashamed of what he had done, but he could do nothing about it.